Welcome to the Concept 101 podcast. My name is Daniel,
Jules,
Stefan.
and we are three concept artists currently working in the films and games industry, as well as the organisers of the Concept 101 event in London. Today, we're going to be chucking a few topics around and talking about how they're relevant to the film, games, and entertainment industry. And
Yes.
Jules is going to start us off.
Yes, cool. So the first topic I'd like for us to chat about today is how to never miss any deadlines anymore. And which
Wow,
is
you never miss deadlines, Jules?
well, I used to. No, actually, did I ever
I don't
miss
think
a
I've
deadline?
ever missed a
No, I don't
deadline.
think I ever
Yeah.
missed.
What is a missing a deadline?
When they say get it done by Monday and you go,
Yeah.
oh, well, it's Tuesday now.
I've definitely been like, oh, I have 10 minutes left, and then I
Yeah.
finish it, But usually I feel like it's been okay. Also because I've always been given reasonable deadlines,
Yeah.
So it's not only thanks to me, it's also being thanks to the people I work with who are honest and
So
good person.
the first learning here is maybe not quite related to movies, but in games, you sometimes get to set your own deadlines and tell the people, they'll ask you how much, I mean, maybe it's in movies as well, but they'll ask you, how much do you think it will take you? And if you say it's going to take me 1 day, even
Yeah.
though you deep down know it's going to take you 2 days, but you want to impress them, then you're not going to finish it on time. And that's your problem. So set yourself realistic deadlines and then add 1 day on top of it.
Yeah.
That's what I would
That
do.
is good advice.
Yeah.
Yeah. In film, you often do to an extent. People will usually ask you how long things will take. Of course, they are usually expecting a particular answer, I would say.
Okay, yeah.
But I think it's pretty good advice. Is like when you are in a situation where you can set your own deadlines, be very kind of like conscious about how long things have historically taken you in the past, and then add on an extra day just to be safe. If you can hand it in the day before, the client will be really happy and you'll be able to jump onto the next project sooner. If something goes horribly wrong, then you have an extra safety
Yeah,
day
yeah.
to help you recover.
That's true. It depends. I mean, to be the devil's advocate here, if they're like, oh, we need 2 very simple sketches, how long would that take you? And you think that takes you an afternoon, but you add a day to it.
No, but like adding a reasonable, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
like reasonable time. Yeah,
Yeah.
if
it's like adding maybe
half of what
If someone said if it would take me half a day, I'd add another half a day on.
yeah, exactly. Like
fair enough.
at least
So yeah, but not a full day.
no.
But yeah, that was me being devil's advocate.
Yeah, we understand.
Cool.
Thank you, Devil's Advocate. That was excellent.
I am doing horns with my fingers right now. That was terrible. Anyway, so yes, setting yourself realistic deadlines, understanding how fast you work, which means also being comfortable with your tools and knowing your own process and workflow, is going to be a crucial part of just working and fitting within the deadlines I've been given to you. I think another topic which is very important is how important fundamentals are within.
We should have a
I said it's
fundamentals counter. In
Yeah.
the,
Every
Yeah.
time one of us says fundamentals,
Should we just
it's
like a-
ding.
yeah. Or like the in Mortal Kombat, sometimes there's like characters that pop out
Yeah.
on screen, like whoopee.
It's
We
like a
should do
combo
this.
thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, so basically, it's like having good fundamentals would make you a better artist and also will allow you to adapt to the situation better, right?
Yeah.
And so that means that if, let's say, you have a deadline of a keyframe and you're working with 3D and then your 3D crashes or you have a 3D issue, then if you have those fundamentals and if you have the ability to work with many softwares and potentially like lighting theory, like perspective, all that kind of stuff, then you'll be able to just stop your 3D there, take a screenshot and finish the paint over on Photoshop and just, don't bother too much with the issue. In the same ways, what if like Photoshop crashes or...
What if Photoshop updates?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my god.
Like if Photoshop updates, like
You're fucked.
you're
You are fucked.
that's it, Or what if Photoshop behaves like usually behaves, which means crashes or does stuff that doesn't work.
All of a sudden you have none of your brushes in.
If you have a lot of, I guess, more tools under your belt or more fundamentals, that will allow you to just bounce back and
Obviously-
use more skills and other skills to then finish your work on time.
It's a
the-
stupid example, but if you are a good enough painter, you probably could use Clip Studio Paint, right?
I was gonna make a joke, like if the Photoshop crashes, you just make an oil painting. Just like, you finish the job, you can do
Well,
whatever
for
you can
example,
do, get done.
I've had some client stuff where, I mean, this has just been a choice, but sometimes in film you have to do like line art designs and stuff like that. if you can do good line art in real life, then it doesn't matter if your computer crashes or not, right? For a task like that, because I would just be able to do it with my hands, which is great.
On paper.
On paper, exactly, which can be great. So, yeah, I think it's a pretty valid point to say, like, yeah, you need to just be comfortable enough with a different range of things. If Blender crashes, you should be able to use a bit of 3D Coat. If 3D Coat's not working, you should know how to do it in VR. And if VR is not working, you should know how to use a bit of ZBrush to get it done. Obviously, in the event that all of these programs are crashing, you are probably fucked. But that is pretty unlikely. So being able to jump between many different things to kind of save your ass in these situations can be super helpful. Yeah.
Yeah, and relying on tools that are more bulletproof, I guess, as well. Like sketching on paper is more bulletproof than Photoshop, but Photoshop could be more bulletproof than Blender.
But what if the fire demon sets it on fire and he comes and sets your paper?
What if your PC burns? What if your house burns? What do you do?
Imagine you.
That's why you back up to the server, Jules.
Yeah, exactly.
My house is backed up.
That's
to
why.
the server.
That's why you scan your drawings. I heard. I was off topic, but I heard that Mache, like, or maybe Jama, like something happened. I think it was Mache. Like something happened there. One of their work got lost, or half of it got lost. And since then, they would have like 50 different methods of backing up their work. That like every time they press save, it would like save to different machines, different things, so they could never lose.
He has like a real man plugged into his wall, and it like downloads into the guy's brain.
Yeah. It's a Warhammer 40k server.
Yeah.
It's like, help me, kill me. Like, nope, you're gonna remember this JPEG now. That's what you're made for.
Oh my god,
that's very dark.
But yeah, all that to say that that would also add to a value as an artist if you can jump to different processes and if you're just more comfortable with your workflow. And if you do all that, you might be able to hit your deadlines every time and to really watertight proof your process.
Watertight proof.
Yeah, waterproof tight. Tight proof water.
I can't even really think about how you would say that properly.
Yeah.
Anyway, one thing as well with deadlines is, this is some very good advice I got on one of my first freelance projects, was I got this very unrealistic deadline from a client who asked me to do this like big piece of key framework essentially for a theme park ride, I think it was. And I was very inexperienced at the time. I wasn't that good either. And they essentially gave me 2 days, which now I would be like, yeah, whatever, mate, no worries. Give me one for the thrill. But at the time, I was quite experienced. So the idea of doing a full image in 2 days was like horrifying.
Yeah, I remember
and
this.
So I totally freaked out. And after about a day and a half, I was just like sitting there. I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? I was like, I got to call somebody up. So I called up one of my mentors, Kev, and I asked for him for some advice. And he gave me some very, very good advice, which was, if you work on something for 2 days, right, and they give you 2 days to do it, then they get 2 days of quality. If they want a higher quality image, they can give you 3 days, 4 days, 5 days, a week, 3 months. But if they pay you for 2 days, you give them 2 days worth of work, which is great advice, because I think also one of the things he said that was like very foundational in the way that I understand briefings and deadlines is like most clients understand the quality level that certain time periods will produce. If somebody says, I want you to do this in 1 day, even an inexperienced artist understands that 1 day is a very short amount of time, right? A director who might have never painted an image in their life still understands that that is a very short amount of time. And so they will be expecting slightly rougher images. Yep. So totally freaking out because it doesn't look like a Romain Gendot painting after 1 day is kind of unreasonable in a way, because no one's expecting it. Yeah. And if they are, that's a conversation that needs to happen with the client.
That's also why it's very important to tell them that. And that's also why artists who are very experienced and very fast have very high day rates, because they will go to these artists who are like just some of the best in the world, because they're like, okay, I hire you for 2 days, but you're going to give me 2 keyframes or like 2 final images. And
they're going to be better than everybody else's.
Yeah. But that's why these guys are more expensive, because they do better work faster.
Yeah. Like Stefan.
Yes.
He's the champion.
I am the fastest here.
Your name is...
My name is Lightning.
Sonic Stefan.
No. Was the name Lightning from
McQueen?
McQueen.
Doesn't right. It's not.
Stefan
no
McQueen. Stefan McQueen.
What?
Why not just Sonic Stefan, guys?
Sonic Stefan. Okay.
Sonic Boom Stefan.
Sonic Stefan. Yeah.
I have in fact gotten faster recently, and I've been focusing a lot on speed at work.
And what's helped you do that to help you start meeting deadlines a bit more easily then?
Having a straightforward process. I think Daniel's like, I told you 50 times before. No, I think what helped me with that was having a clear understanding of like where I am at what stage of the process as well, and knowing what stage each stage should look like. So it takes like a few paintings until you understand like where you should be, and then that way like how far I am from finishing. I know like I'm at the 3D. I don't do 3D right now at work, but let's say I'm in the color sketch phase. Okay, and at that point I know that I only have like 2 more phases to finish before I do the final painting. And let's say I did all my shapes phase and I collected my references, then I know I'm probably only like 4 hours from finishing the painting, depending on how difficult it is, right?
Yeah.
Most of the time.
I think that really just comes down to experience, right? The more kind of images that you produce, the more diversified the images that you've created across your career, the quicker you'll be able to understand how long it will take you to make something. If you've never designed a creature before and you don't have a set, like put together process for designing a creature, then when a client says, give me a creature in 2 days, you might shit yourself.
That's going to be very hard.
Yeah. But if you've taken the time in your personal work or in your professional career to design a creature, right, and you've been briefed that before, then suddenly for me at least, right, I would do a few sketches, then I would go into Gravity Sketch, I would build a basic maquette of that creature, then I would bring that creature into probably Blender or ZBrush, I'd remesh it, I'd sculpt it, smooth it together, finesse it a bit, then I'd bring it in Photoshop, get a nice render out, paint over it, done. I'm finished. And I know that will take me roughly a day. And if they want more variety of designs, if they want more kind of like breakdown in the stages, that will take longer, right? So it's understanding these things, right, that kind of helps the most, I think, with keeping your eye on deadlines. And really the easiest way to get on top of that is to just make a lot of work with a lot of diversified kind of approaches to test out what will work for you.
Yeah. And this also, like, you know that because you took you made the choice to challenge yourself to learn how to make a creature, right? And then you did it in your personal work, and now you have more knowledge on how to do that. And in the same way, you probably challenge yourself to make a creature in a pretty fast pace, right? Because if you just challenge yourself to just do a personal work, but then you take like 2 months to do it, then you probably won't be able to do it fast and meet the deadline necessarily, right? You will be in a better place to meet your deadline, but not as much as if you really try and make the deadline. Like if you do, like for example, for you, Steph, having to hit some short deadlines, by trying to hit them and by hitting them, you learn how to hit them more efficiently, right?
Yeah.
And so the being fast and knowing how to do the work is linked together, but at some point you kind of have to force yourself to be fast to really you have to kind of do the trial by fire to be able to understand how much time it will take you within the deadlines. Yeah. A bit of a weird sentence at the end, but yeah.
I wonder if like something that you're not related or maybe partially related to that is if I am sometimes when I do a painting at work, I realize that like it has more potential. Let's say I'm doing like a wider shot. Like if you are doing a wider shot, you're going to spend more time on it because there's a lot more shapes. There are a lot more things to draw. If you're doing like multiple characters as well, right? It's going to be more difficult to do a painting like that than just the painting with like one character, flat background, and some basic whatever plant in the front or something, right? Like if it's just one thing that you're designing, those subjects or like paintings are going to be faster. But sometimes in games, it's beneficial to do a wider painting that has a lot more things in it. But you also, and this is just the decision you make, like, okay, I'm going to do a bigger painting, but it's going to be more beneficial for the team because they're not just going to see a little slivet for inspiration, but they're going to see the whole environment with all of the things interacting properly. But yes, I'll have to like spend more time on it. And this is something I feel like maybe doesn't come up in movies as often because you just have a hard deadlines. I feel like in games, especially like now I'm in this kind of, let's say you end up being in a stage where, so I've done before stages in pre-production or something like that, where you have time to mess around a little bit and then you can kind of decide.
Yeah, we just get stuff done, man. Sorry. It's just they say do this and we go, yes, sorry. and it's done like that. Bang, bing, bing, bada boom.
Yeah.
That's me and Jules.
And
Yeah.
in games,
Computer, big boop.
and in games, we just sit in meetings and drink hot chocolate every day.
That's good.
Sounds nice.
Yeah.
Cool.
Anything else we have to say about how to meet deadlines?
I think really it's just do a lot of stuff in your own time to do it. I think one thing that people misunderstand is a lot of students I work with, they keep telling me like, I want to work on my speed. I want to get faster, because they are kind of, I guess, have anxiety about meeting deadlines once they do achieve a professional standard. The thing is, it's much easier to get faster than it is to achieve a professional standard in the first place. And so for anybody listening out there who's like, oh shit, maybe I'm not fast enough, focus on just getting your work to be good enough first, and then focus on the speed. I think speed is something that is very easy to accumulate once you have processes that work, and when you experiment and stay curious about what's going on. I think my speed would have been, especially like within like 3D software, I'm sure I would have progressively got faster. But one thing that really helped me was exploring VR software a lot more, because Stefan actually originally showed it to me when we first met, and I thought, damn, this shit's fucking cool. And I genuinely, I'm not probably the tidiest concept artist, I would say. Like, there's probably a bit of mess, some edges to my work. And so VR fits that process very well. It allows me to create things like creatures incredibly quickly. It allows me to create vehicles incredibly quickly, guns, characters, whatever. And then gives me the bandwidth to just paint over them to get it done, which for me is a much faster process. So it's also about doing enough experimentation to really understand what works for you, and then sticking with that to an extent so you get faster and faster and faster at it.
Yeah, yeah. And the point you said about it's more important to make good work first, I think I really agree with that, because also once you get the job, then you can learn how to get faster, you know. Like, it's important to be good enough, then you get a job, and then you can just a bit, as I said before, learn by trial by fire a bit. It's like you have to do it, so then you just end up doing it, and then you also have people who you're working with who will help you and assist you into like maybe giving you new techniques on how to just be more efficient and more
Or it could be trial by lava, where they throw you into it and don't give you any help.
So
yeah.
having understanding of the right processes, what things to improve on as a student is very important, because it puts you in the spot where eventually you can improve a lot.
Are you about to do a transition?
I am.
You can tell because his voice changes when he does it.
It's more of a,
But
well,
in that context, what's also important is
Go on, bring it home.
learning learning hacks. I missed it.
No.
I want to say, in that context, what's also important is learning the correct things in the correct order. And sometimes, as students, we fall into this pitfall
Yeah.
of learning quick hacks
Yeah.
in concept art that you think, and they might improve your artwork, and you think they're gonna make you faster or better artist, but in reality they're just gonna hinder your progress. And
your topic is.
and my topic is how to avoid these quick hacks, or like essentially my topic is how I wish I didn't do some of these quick hacks and learn them, and I think it would have improved my progress a lot.
It's a very long title. I don't know if we can fit that on the YouTube thumbnail.
The quick title is Why Learning Quick Hacks to Concept Art is Hurting Your Progress.
Woo! He landed it.
by that you mean that if someone just bypasses a whole skill because they found a quick hack that replaces it, it might be harmful for them once they actually need to rely on the skill they just bypassed.
Kind of. So here I want to specifically, so I'm going to specify this, and from my point of view, we're just going to talk about shape language here.
Okay.
Because it's something that I didn't learn when I was in university, and I've been learning more recently. Not that I didn't learn, but I definitely learned in a very basic extent, right? And when I was in university, I learned learn squared course from a very famous concept artist, and it had a lot of quick, funny, interesting hacks how to create concept art in it. And those hacks help you produce better images potentially, but they also allow you to skip certain fundamentals like shape language, or allow you to produce something thinking like, oh, I don't need to learn shape language, or just I don't need to learn how to create pleasing compositions. By just throwing shit at the wall, I will always create pleasing compositions, right? So what I have to learn is like, how do I get better at recognizing that the shit that I threw at the wall is a good composition, right? Thinking that over time you just get better at recognizing pretty compositions, right? But really what you need to learn over time is how to make pretty compositions yourself from scratch, not how to recognize pretty compositions, right? It's like mix of both, essentially, right? So what I've trained is skill of like seeing what stuff good looks good, but not how to make it look good, right? I practice that skill of like seeing it more than making it look good, essentially. So what I ended up doing with a lot of my artwork, especially until now, was just like trying many things in my paintings until it looked good. And when it did, I obviously knew that it looked good. So I was like, okay, this looks good. And I just continue building on top of it. And I never knew quite why. I just knew when I saw it, right? And this ended up slowing me down a lot, right? What I should have done is breaking down my process, not just my process, broken down the image that I saw in front of me into specific things that make images look good. And in this case, we're talking about shape language. And shape language, you know, comes with its own baggage of what makes things or shapes be appealing, right? Like shape appeal, it certainly starts at the fundamentals of like perspective, correct, you know, that the design is readable and all of these things. And then it goes into the parts of the big, medium, small, uneven spacing, and potentially expressing things through shapes, right? Like shape contrast. Okay, around the main area, that's the focal point, I'll have spiky shapes against round shapes. So you get more contrast there, so your eye leads there. And then in the rest of the image, I'll maybe go for more like flowy shapes, because that way, you know, you have like some rest around the image. Understanding these things is incredibly important, and knowing how to build your image on top of this knowledge is very important. It's something that I never did. Daniel?
Yeah, just to ask here, what specifically is the issue with using these quick hacks? Because like you were saying, they can help you create good images, right? So I think one of the examples that we spoke about before the podcast started was like putting together a load of images on different overlay modes to try and find appealing compositions within whatever you're creating, right?
Yes.
There. So essentially you're randomizing the output to an extent, right?
Or like throwing a piece of ink on a paper, right? Until you find some interesting shape, right?
So where specifically do you kind of like see the issue there? Because obviously these are things that some very good professional artists do.
I find the issue there that if you have to build the composition this way, you might not be able to build it towards its purpose, essentially. So if the art director asks you to create a village that has a very aggressive feeling, right? Just because you're throwing ink aggressively on the page, you might not get aggressive shapes, you know? You might just get like interesting arrangement of shapes, but you will always be stuck of like, oh, this kind of looks cool, but it doesn't look aggressive. You just don't know how to achieve that aggressive look. You don't know like how to achieve the look that the shapes essentially like arranged in a nice space, you know?
Yeah, it's about being, so what we're saying is that you are able to recognize something that looks good, if I really simplify it, right? But you're not necessarily understanding how to make something look good.
Exactly.
Or like, oh, this car is running.
I mean, I think
I don't know how the engine works.
I think
but it's running.
I think the main disadvantage of not knowing these fundamentals from a shape language perspective is it makes you slow. It makes you slow because you are relying on the happy accidents. And the professionals that use these techniques, they know what they are trying to achieve. They already know all the fundamentals.
Because you have all the experience.
Exactly. And what they are trying to do is just create something more unique. But then they know how to take that thing that they drew that happened randomly and then extract the successful elements out of it and throw away the unsuccessful ones. And design the unsuccessful ones into successful ones.
I think a pretty good example of this is kind of a lot of students I meet who use a lot of heavy 3D, which we've discussed the issues with that before, blah, blah, blah. But not to go too deep into that, but one of the problems that I often see is that they will try to find compositions in the 3D all the time, right? without understanding compositional principles beforehand, and that becomes a problem. As professionals, right, me and Jules especially, because we use a lot of 3D because it's necessary for our work, we often do have to go and find compositions within 3D sets that we're given, within sets that we've had to design and build, right, and find appealing angles to film stuff from. However, we're coming into that with a level of knowledge about how to compose imagery.
Yeah.
So when we're moving the cameras around, we're looking for like the different breakups of like where the horizon line is versus where the sky is. We're looking for like overlaps between images, the different whether things line up on the thirds, blah 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 blah. These
like
different compositional
To
things,
create,
right?
yeah,
We know the
balanced
type of
compositions.
recipe and we know the type of set rules that will allow us to make a successful image.
Yeah.
And so we're looking on how we can apply those rules within the context we're given.
Yes.
To craft a good image.
Which is again very different to what a lot of students do, which is where they just put a camera in and they go 150 millimeter focal length. That'll do. Let me put it in the top left hand corner and I'll zoom in on my main character. And there's no thought behind what they're doing. I think this is also kind of a again, this is not a bad thing that happens in the industry, but one thing that I've noticed a lot is kind of concept art projects where people build a lot of 3D assets and then, which is great, by the way, if you're building your own stuff, and then they just do a lot of very small keyframes of stuff, kind of like shot, almost like a storyboard, right? So if you have a shot of like a bunch of people having a car chase, it's going to be one shot of the front of the car, then a cinematic shot of the back, then a shot from the top, and all of these micro shots. But they never really create an image which has what I would call a artistic composition. So often in cinema, right, we're creating images which are very easy to digest in a very, very, very short amount of time. But the thing that's different in concept art is that we're also trying to create artistic images which give off loads of information and are also artistically appealing. A lot of cinematic compositions are artistically appealing, but in a very, very basic way, which is, again, not a bad thing. It's just to do with medium. So I think a lot of people don't push themselves enough to really try and understand those kind of fundamental rules to a point where they can then push them and go from like a basic functional composition to like a great composition, which again is the same thing that we were discussing about with the shape language and all this other stuff.
Yeah. It's like, how can I use this not just as a step in my process rather than a tool in my process?
Yeah.
It's like, I'm going to use composition rather than just to show what I've been designing, but I'm going to use it to help emphasize what I've been designing, to help the narration to what I've been designing. I think a lot of work, for example, from Denis Villeneuve on the Dune movies, for example, or Blade Runner, it's still it's nothing crazy about the compositions, but the way it's made is much more, I guess, artistic, or it takes a more original take than other movies, where he emphasizes a lot on the composition of his shots and on the narration that the shots bring rather than what's being said in the shots. And so that could be an interesting way comparing like regular type of shots in the movie compared to the way Denis Villeneuve uses shots.
So going back to the, what should you do if you are like in this situation like how I was, and this podcast come out and you're learning all these hacks from YouTube videos or whatever tutorials, I think you should stop. And I think you should start learning a little bit of fundamentals, And one thing I was afraid of, for example, I don't know why, it's kind of stupid when I say it, but when I was in university, I was afraid of making an image out of like shapes, and then, this sounds stupid, and then clipping my photos to a shape that I already designed.
That like scared you physically?
Yeah, no, I don't know. I thought I should learn to photo bash without clipping photos into a shape for some reason.
I think it's just kind of a fundamental misunderstanding of the process there, though, right? Because you're a student.
Is it because it's like cheating?
Yeah, I mean, there's like some people who are like, you have to use the round brush to paint, which is asinine.
Yeah.
Don't do that. No, literally no point. The idea that, I mean, I think we spoke about this before, have we? But the idea that like real painters only use one brush is so stupid. I mean, I did fine art for years, and I had many brushes of different shapes. It wasn't just the one.
That's the whole business model of art craft shops, right? There's like endless amount of arts mediums and brushes and pens and stuff like this, and like there's nothing wrong of translating this similar principle to like brush in Photoshop.
Yeah. It's like saying no, you can't use Copics. You have to be able to do it all with a pencil.
Yeah.
It's like no, what the
You're
fuck?
gonna painfully draw your shapes.
So for me, that's been like, for example, a game changer in my process is learning to just design my environment. After I've done like my sketches and done my like lighting pass and color pass and blah blah, I do like a shape pass on top of my painting where I just focus on the shapes and how is the harmony of the shapes working in the whole image, and I essentially take like if there's rocks or if there's like I don't know if it's like an interior scene, there's cups or things on the tables, I just represent them as black and white shapes with some slight different shading, slight different shade of gray so I can see them, and then I just orient them so they look pleasing, and I also try to look for the shape design that I'm trying to do and convey within the environment. And then when it all works in harmony there, I know I can just move on to the final stage of photo bashing, and I already have in my process at this point, I already know exactly what lighting I'm doing and colors and all this stuff. So for me at that point, it's just about putting textures on top of things and like and doing proper what is it called color grading and stuff like that. Yeah,
I think also the shapes thing can also be interesting to look at them in a value structure way.
Yeah,
I think that's
like,
what he's doing when he does the
yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah, I just make it. Oh yeah, actually, good point here. That when you are like learning these fundamentals, another thing is like your brain can only focus on one thing at a time. When you're not like when you're learning new thing. Once you are used to it, it's not like that. Like your brain can take many things because it's like habit. But when you're learning, let's say about shapes, the easiest way to see shapes is just like plain, like silhouettes, right? This is just a plain silhouette color, right? And black and white.
Yeah.
If it's colors in there, it's already like too complicated. But if it's just like plain, then it's super easy for your brain to understand. And like, let's say you want to focus on color, then you just focus on color. You're not trying to design pleasing shapes and focus on color, because if you are not good at them, then your brain is just not gonna do them at once, essentially. So you need to take it in stages, And when you want to like do a good idea, then you just focus on the idea first. And yeah.
So at the end of the day, a solution to the issue you described would be to, when you look at a tutorial, I don't think it's, you can still look at tutorials and quick tips, right? But it's to be maybe a bit more critical of what you're looking at and asking yourself, who's telling me these tricks and what background do they have? And maybe try to break down the skills they're using to make these tips and tricks and shortcuts work, right? Because if you see someone using tips and trick to make good composition, then ask yourself, okay, but because usually you see these guys and they just nail it the first time, right? They just do a few things and they're like, oh yeah, that one works, and they pick it. Compared to you when you do it, or like anyone when he does it and doesn't have the fundamentals that the person teaching has, they will do blobs and stuff, and then they will like, oh, that one works. Oh no, never mind, doesn't. Just ask yourself what makes the person finding the right trick. What makes him know that, and then try to learn that.
Yeah. I also just want to say there's a tiny caveat to all of this. Obviously, focus on your skills, but by the same token, sometimes, guys, a little trick here or there, a little quick hack can be very, very useful in a professional setting.
Yes.
So don't completely block all this stuff out. In many ways, I kind of consider 3D a bit of a quick hack to some extent, right? It allows you to jump over a lot of different skills to end up with a much better kind of like outcome much faster. Does that mean that you should give up on painting and understanding lighting and form and all these other principles? No, definitely not. But again, you can't just throw it away. The same thing with some people who consider using textural brushes a quick hack for painting. Does that mean you should only use the round brush? No, that's ridiculous. Of course you should use other brushes.
Yeah.
You need to use the skill set and the tools that are there and provided to you, because other people will be using them. And especially if they're considered like kosher within the professional community, they're totally fine to do. And as long as your whole process isn't just based around that, there's no problem with it.
Yeah.
So I just laughed because I thought of the Bane analogy, but the fundamentals, like imagine Batman comes to Bane goes,
Very excited for this impression.
you merely adapted fundamentals. I mastered them. I was born in them, molded by them.
You sound just like an art nerd rather than Bane.
You were born in perspective.
You sound like me when I'm off the podcast.
You merely adopted the dark. I was born.
Cool. Shall we move on to the
molded
final
by it.
topic?
Yeah, let's.
Or did you want to do more impressions?
Um,
Could you do a Harley Quinn impression, maybe?
no.
Do Scooby-Doo.
So
Do,
easy. Raggy, where are we?
Do Homer Simpson.
Homer Simpson.
Marge, what's going on? That's really good.
Yeah.
We just lost half the people on the pod.
Do I know any impressions? No.
We should really impress ourselves by doing the next topic.
Okay, Homer. Sure thing. What are we talking about? Blah blah blah. Just looking through my notes, guys. So sometimes,
You eat donuts.
sometimes when you're Homer Simpson, all right,
You eat donuts.
my favorite impersonation to do, I'm clearly very good at it.
Yeah.
You're going to the nuclear power plant, and you're like, maybe it's time to start a new job. So you go work at the Duff factory, right?
Yeah.
And maybe when you're working at the Duff factory, you want to learn some new skills. And so I thought it'd be worth talking about when you're beginning a new kind of like career somewhere, specifically, I guess in this case, concept art, probably not talking about working in a beer factory. How do you get the most out of the people around you, and how do you continue to learn in these new environments?
Well, you take the beer that you do,
Yeah.
you make them drunk,
Yeah.
and then you ask them questions.
That's actually not a bad idea. Yeah.
Yeah.
Socializing,
You
pretty
pay
much,
for
right?
their.
Yeah.
You pay
So
for their beer.
the non-Homer analogy to that would be maybe have fun with your colleagues, maybe like go to a bar together or just hang out, socialize, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Just first of all, that would probably make you fit better in the team, and also get to pass the
Awkward
we're-
stage.
Yeah, like we're a colleague, we do not have fun here, but like you're like, oh yeah, we're friends, friends, fun colleagues, and yeah, that might just help, I guess, with getting the ball started.
Yeah.
You want to show them that you are. I think like one thing that I try to do is to show, despite the minimal amount of personal work that appears on my art station, I try to show that I'm still learning and like doing things and stuff like that, whether it's doing mentorships or things like that. I do it at work, and like it gives me like some street cred of someone who is like doing stuff outside of work, trying to learn
On the
And
tough streets of concept art.
obviously on top of the doing the podcast and like the conference or
Yeah.
whatever, it earns you a little bit of respect.
Just remove your shirt and you say, see the scar? Well, that was a brush one day.
that
was when my Wacom tablet exploded on me.
That was when I got electrocuted for 3 years by a whack-a-mole board.
This may or may not have happened.
This is when at an event someone told me my portfolio was shit.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a good thing though to always try and as well go in and be keen. No matter kind of like what stage of your career that you're at, if you're going into a studio environment, especially a studio environment, right, and you're acting like a know-it-all, even if you are a know-it-all, to be, I mean, because I'm sure there are some artists who go into environments which are way more experienced than the other people there. You still have to be interested in what other people are doing and what they can potentially show and teach you.
Yeah.
If you're, let's say, super into like traditional painting or something, you want to be Sid Mead, but all of the rest of your team are 3D like heavy guys, you should still show it in like a very big interest in what they're doing, because they can then teach you about 3D and they can show you new processes, and you can kind of see if you can bring that into what you're doing. So I think it's, you should always, regardless of where you are, make an active approach and have an active interest in what's going on around you.
Yeah, and if you're friendly people, if you show them, again, I think keep mentioning respect, but if you show respect to your colleagues and interest and just being genuine, then they'll give you back. They'll also be interested in you, and they'll also be willing to help you and learn new skills.
Do you guys have like a favorite story where you've learned something from your colleagues by like trying to like go out of your way to learn something?
I remember one of my ADs in the past who I feel like I did have to kind of, one thing to understand just before I get into the story is like when you're working with other people, they're very busy, and sometimes if you want a certain thing from somebody, especially if it's maybe their job to teach you that thing to an extent, you might have to pull it out of them a little bit. And there's nothing wrong with being, especially if you're like working in a studio, just being not like rude, but a tiny bit forceful about like wanting to get the information out of someone, and really like repetitively kind of being like, hey, do you have time to show me how to do XYZ thing now? Obviously, that's within the boundaries of politeness and working within a kind of a space with other people. But sometimes you do have to do a little bit of kind of prep work almost to like get them to show you something.
I think that's the case, especially when you're like, for example, you're a junior and you're starting.
Yeah.
And you're meant to have a lead or a director or someone who's meant to be taking care of you, kind of guide you in the right way. Like if this knowledge is not coming from them naturally, then yeah, definitely like you want to, it's in your rights, or it's normal for you to go look for what you're supposed to be getting, right? And if someone tells you, no, that's not good, be like, oh, okay, I take the feedback, thank you. How come? Can you develop? Can you tell me why?
Yeah.
Well, it just doesn't feel right. Okay, can you please tell
Explain
me,
what that
show me?
means.
Yeah. And
Can
it's
you paint
like,
over it?
yeah, and you're just like kind of pulling the information out of them, in case they don't really do it by themselves, but usually they would do it by themselves, I guess.
Yeah. But I would say one of my favorite learning experiences was one of my past art directors doing a paint over for me on a piece, which was just really great. And it was just seeing the, I kind of made a habit of just like sitting over his shoulder and just like watching him do work at some point. Cause I just was like, oh, well, I'll just learn this way. And eventually he did a paint over one of my paintings. And it was just really great seeing the way that he laid down the brush strokes, and he was explaining it as he was doing it as well, which was like just incredibly informative to my process now. And it was just one of those like very clear moments where like when I'm painting now, I still think about like, how did that AD do it again? And I was like, oh yeah, they did this and this, so I'll do that, and I'll change the color hue here, and I'll change the brush angle like that.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll change the texture of the brush. I think it is a really quite transformative experience when you do have people who are actually engaged with teaching you and who want to kind of educate you to improve you. It can be just really great.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like most of my skills that I have today, I owe them to the people I worked with. I mean, my first job
Mainly
was,
me, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. But my first job, I learned so much in a few months. Like I think the amount of skills that my lead gave me in the first few months of my career, it's probably the most useful skills I gained in my whole career. I mean, I still learn a lot from my colleagues, right?
Yeah.
But it's just like when you are surrounded by people who know more than you, and when you kind of manage and allow you to create an environment where you learn a lot, or like you just share stuff, then it's just amazing. Because also, by the way, it's not because you're less skilled than someone else that you cannot teach them something as well. Maybe you're a bit of a younger person in the industry, so you know new tools, or maybe you've heard about something that other people haven't heard about. So it doesn't only need to be like they give to you. You can also try and give to them other stuff, or like engage conversation, engage stuff, and that will also make it easier to have a back and forth conversation rather than just, I want to have all your brain for me and to learn everything from you.
Don't suck on people's heads. It's weird. don't grab somebody by the cranium and start just like whispering, I want your brains, like that. That won't go down well. Yeah. And I can say that from Stefan's experience.
Yep.
But yeah, so I guess at my first job, it was like insanely, I learned so much really just by asking. And even now, like I remember, like for example, I was working on the VFX stuff about a year ago. Yeah. And one of the other artists I work with and the head of departments, they have a pretty long experience of dealing with matte painting, and they have, over the years, they developed a very good eye for this kind of work. Yeah. And I was working on it, and I felt like, yeah, it looks good, it's fine. And then they're like, no, it doesn't look good. I'm like, what? How do you, like, why? Like, I don't understand, because it was like a very heavy matte painting kind of image. Yeah. And then they just showed me, and I was like, oh yeah, oh wow, okay, I understand now. And they also showed me through the process and what tools they use, like especially for example, in Photoshop, there's a tool called Selective Color, which allows you to only change some specific type of colors in the image. I never heard about that before. Before, I would just open hue saturation stuff and I would just move stuff around until it looks okay, which obviously most of the time doesn't look okay. But by seeing them use that and explaining them, and them explaining me how they use it and in what's the process, I was like, holy shit, okay, it makes sense now. And since then, I've been using this process pretty much every time I have to modify colors or make some, or like comp an image into a.
Well, use selective color. That would be interesting to see. I don't use selective color.
Yeah. What's your favorite learning experience, Stefan?
I don't know. I've been at Sharkmob for a while, so I've kind of went through different art directors, two different art directors, and different artists as well, being by my side, teaching me. I certainly had fun looking at Richard's work and like him explaining me some of the stuff that he did. But I think the most recent, I think if there's anything that's the most learning experience that I had was with Sam. She's been very difficult art director to like do good work for. I don't know if that makes any sense. Like she has very high standards for some of the work that we do. And then for me that meant like I had to try extra hard. And
So what you mean is that she
sets a high bar for you.
yeah.
She set a high bar for me.
She's
Yeah.
pushing you to produce your best work.
Yeah, she said. I mean, I didn't mean to say it like in a bad way, and if Sam listens to this, she will know. But it meant for me that I had to try extra hard, and I've always tried hard. But like, I never understood what the heck was wrong with my work until she like sat down with me and explained to me where I need to make the improvements, which was very helpful. And she allowed me to. So I contacted a friend who knows this exact secret knowledge that she wanted me to learn. And he'd been teaching me that knowledge ever
And
since.
that knowledge was just a secret brush, right? It was
Yeah,
just
it was,
one
yeah.
Photoshop brush.
It was using the round brush. That was the secret.
That was the secret, yeah, that I should have known all along. Yeah, so she didn't necessarily teach me this stuff. She knew like what was happening and how to like explain it, but she's been incredibly busy on the project. So we decided that I will just, we'll hire someone who is very good at this stuff that we both know. They can just teach me these things.
That's amazing,
Yeah, and that's been like some of the best learning.
And again, like I think being open and honest, and if you have difficulties at work about certain tasks, just saying it, or just if you know that someone is very good at it, just ask them how they do it. Like, Dan, we work together, and like almost at least once per week, someone does something at work, and we're like, oh wow, how do you do that? And then they just share a bit of knowledge, and we're like, oh cool, great, we should have a meeting and we talk about this.
Yeah, and then they show me and I go, can't do that.
No, but like,
move on.
and then you just learn by being like,
Yeah, you
if
should
you're
be
impressed,
openly curious about what other people
they're
are
like,
doing.
oh wait, that's insane. How do you do that so quickly? And they're just like, oh well, it's actually this thing, and you're like, cool. And then you try to implement it, and that's how you learn, right?
Yeah.
You need to look for the knowledge.
To be fair, one of my colleagues showed me this technique that is part of my process now. That he showed it to me like on something else, but then I modified it into my process, and I find it like incredibly useful. In specifically related to like how to design like color and kind of lighting in your image, and it's like just very useful. And then I guess I wanted to say that if you are looking to learn more from your colleagues, you're in a job, it's good to set up a meeting at least once a week where it's just a free space for everyone to give feedback. And they can say that your image is shit if they want. Like this is the space where everyone's gonna give their opinion, and also opinions like how to fix something. And it's just because even if you have like regular meetings, people will be, especially if it's like with AD, you're doing like art director review, people will be a bit more reserved with giving feedback because they don't know, maybe there's not enough deadline, not enough time on a deadline or whatever. But if it's just like once a week, you meet with everyone, and wherever stage that the painting is at, everyone can chip in. Even if it's like work in progress and you already, as we mentioned in like previous podcasts that we recorded today, even if you were going to work on these things, the fact that they are mentioning it is just solidifying to you that you should be working on it. You shouldn't be there like, I was going to work on this anyway. It's like, because I was in a meeting like that recently where I was like, oh yeah, but I was going to get to this stage, but it doesn't matter because the fact that they're noticing it means like I have to take it into account extra hard. Just write it down into my notes.
Yeah. Also, if you're not ready to like, this kind of feedback, which is like, okay, let's say I'm showing you an image, right? And I know the image is not finished, and so I know you guys are going to critique me on some aspect of the image. Then don't show it. Or like then just like already say like, hey, it's not finished, so I still know that I have to modify this thing. But otherwise, don't show a whip image if you're not ready to get a feedback for it.
To be fair, sorry.
Yeah, it's true that it's very important to create the environment for you to to kind of get the feedback, right? If the work doesn't do it for yourself, right? It doesn't do it by default. But hopefully your work should allow for an environment where you can just, safely give feedback to each other and also have an opportunity while getting feedback to ask why things are wrong. Can you explain? Can you develop?
Yeah.
Cool.
Cool.
Anything else about feedback that we should talk about?
Don't know. We have another 10 minutes to fill in this podcast.
I could tell some funny jokes.
Yeah.
Here's one.
More.
I'm on a seafood diet. I see food, and if it's a fish, I eat it.
It's an old one.
Hey.
It's an old
See,
one.
it's not an old one. It's a play on an old one.
Yeah.
Here's another one. And I'm just stealing these all from a Norm Macdonald video, by the way. Here's another one. A journey of 1,000 miles starts with one step and then ends with you collapsed 1,000 miles away from where you started, probably in a desert or something. You like that?
That's good, yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
In that sense,
An artistic journey
have
in
a
many
desti-
ways.
have a
You will end up
destination.
in a desert. So.
Have a destination in mind when you start your journey.
Yeah. I don't know. Anything you guys watched or any super impressive piece of concept art you've seen that impressed you lately? I've got one to start.
Are you going to talk about Julian Gautier's
Yeah.
Lord of the Rings stuff?
Guys,
It's literally on his screen as we're recording this.
my screen
Save it.
my saver, yeah, my desktop picture is one of Julien Gauthier piece of work on
Lord of the Rings.
Lord of the Rings.
It's the night one where they're arriving at the city for, what are it? Numenor City, I believe.
yeah.
There's
for
a
the
man
City, yeah.
who knows his fundamentals. Very, very good
Yeah.
work. Yeah.
And like
Even though he uses 3D, he knows like so well his
He
You're
just-
so far away from your microphone right now.
yeah.
Oh, I
So
said-
basically,
no, he's
you
3D, he
guys
knows everything.
should be looking at Julien Gauthier's projects on ArtStation because it's very impressive the way that he just combines what we'll be pretty much describing in this podcast. It's like the perfect amount of fundamentals and using the different tools to just make the image work.
And I'm sure he also learned a lot from people he works with.
Yes.
Yes.
So that was the thing I liked recently. Did you guys like anything recently?
I just thought that project was incredibly impressive.
Yeah.
I think it's it's
designs
pretty
were so
rare,
good as well.
yeah, that a project comes through ArtStation where I think like everybody just goes like, "Ooh, holy shit, that's pretty
Mm-hmm,
cool." Because ArtStation is a bit of a deluge of stuff where it's like day after day, that more and more and more crap. Not
Mm-hmm.
crap, but it's there's a very high standard on ArtStation, and
to stand out.
yeah, to
it's
stand
difficult.
out, you have to be another exceptional level of quality. And I think this project by him was just so cool because not only does it have amazing keyframes, but it has amazing design drawings
Yeah.
and amazing 3D models and amazing pieces of architecture
Composition.
and vistas and composition. Everything is just
Color.
so top notch.
Yeah.
Really, really, really cool stuff.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's very impressive. Very impressive. And also, going back to this ArtStation thing that you said about having unique projects.
Yeah.
That I guess we can go on a slightly little tangent here, which is like this kind of project that I did. I mean, I'll put a link in the description so you can have the look at the project that we're talking about. But this kind of project really really manages to pop out of the similar work that we can see on ArtStation recently, And I think that's even more rare to see that with professional work that just looks so different, because really professional work tends to be trending because it's professional work, because like, oh, you worked on this show, wow. But here it's like professional work, but also has insane qualities that personal work tend to have, where people push themselves on different type of skills, like here painting and designs and presentation. There's this image in this project, which is the
Is it
main
the city of Numenor?
yeah,
I
it's
said,
Numenor,
it's
yeah.
from
But
Numenor, yeah.
there's one image where it's like the main I guess the temple at the top of the hill, and he has this kind of weird. I mean, it's not weird, but it's like this almost architectural drawing on a white background.
Yes.
And that looks it's such a nice way to present your work. And I'm definitely going to try and steal it for my own project at some point, because it's so unique and it's like so good to see. And, that's how a project ends up staying in people's mindset.
Yeah.
Like, I think the day that project got uploaded, like many people were just sending each other the project, like, oh, have you seen this? Oh yeah, we're about to send it to you. That's amazing. Wow. And it's like, yeah. I hope one day, maybe it's never happened, but we get to publish such a cool project.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
Mhm.
Yeah. Stefan's already done it.
Yeah,
Every project he posts.
Are you Julien Gauthier?
I'm really hot, yeah.
Holy shit.
Nah, unfortunately. Well, I don't know how Julien Gauthier is, but I don't mind being myself, So,
That's why you're doing a funny voice right now.
I
Really exudes confidence
I
in your
am
own
I'm
being.
really I'm really considering talking about climbing over here.
Daniel has been dying. This is a very messy podcast,
Yeah.
guys.
It was good until 10 minutes ago.
Yeah. So
Can we just end it?
Yeah, I think we can end it.
That'll be the end for today's episode. We really hope you enjoyed listening. And if you want more, please feel free to subscribe and ring the notification bell. We release episodes every 2 weeks. And if you want any more additional information about the podcast or the event, be sure to check out our Instagram linked in the description below. Thanks again, and we'll see you soon. Bye.
Bye.
see you.